The Sons of the Sun and of the Shadows. Lieutenant Lope de Vega's account of his astounding travels to the land of the Aztecs.
"Holy Christ!" cried Captain Cortez, astonished by the strange rite we beheld. We found the savages half naked. They were throwing balls of silver and gold at each other. They laughed as if demented, clearly maddened by some heathen drug. And yet, should one of them fail to catch the ball thrown in his direction, the poor devil was seized and dragged off to be sacrificed in their temple. As we discovered, this frightful game was a ritual most holy to them, and symbolized the movement of the heavenly bodies. The dropping of a ball foretold a catastrophe. That is what the Aztecs believed, in their godless ignorance. Their countless deities could only be appeased through endless human sacrifices. The victim's heart, which was still beating, lay in the hand of the murderous priest. The interior of the temple was surprisingly cool. The weight of our armor, our exhaustion, even the burden of our suffering, they were all banished by a sense of awe that the crudely magnificent altar instilled. In the tomb-like silence, a deep voice chanted an incantation. The majestic statue of the water goddess, Chalchihuitlicue, seemed to throb with vitality. This massive stone, draped in a golden cloak and studded with precious stones, was coming to life before our very eyes. Horror of horrors! The granite eyes of the statue, empty of life only moments before, were now injected with blood. We staggered back in amazement. Dom Jose was taken by a fit of convulsions. He tried to raise up his crucifix, as if to ward off an attack by demons. The heathen priest laughed cruelly. The statue's mouth cracked open in a deathly grin, bearing teeth sharpened to dagger points. Captain Cortez cried, "Attack!" But it was no use. We were glued to the spot. First, we were unable to move. Our armor seemed to be bolted to the temple floor. Our legs weakened, and we collapsed in a thunder of steel. Only Cortez had the presence of mind to unsheath his dagger. He hurled it at the cackling priest. 4 inches of the finest Toledo steel buried itself in the heathen's face. His blood spurted, splashing the now lifeless idol. We picked ourselves up with difficulty. Never will I forget that terrible moment. My companions, naturally enough, told tales of devilish enchantments cast upon our armor. Whatever the truth of that, I could not deny that the supreme god of the 4th universe had treated us as mere playthings. I am convinced that a terrible energy is yet contained within that heathen statue. A power strong enough to change a proud conquistador into a helpless puppet. Drawing of Chalchihuitlicue by Dom Jose de la Sierra, done before the destruction of the Aztec temple of Tenochtitlan.
If Rocks Could Talk, or The Story of a Louisiana Plantation by the Marquise de Chamfray.
After the criminal selling off of Florida by the foul usurper, my father elected to remain in this inhospitable land, where we were free at least to express our royalist feelings, and hope our country would come to its senses. In 1818, a certain Pickford bought up Ledoux's land, after the poor fellow had ruined himself in unfortunate speculation. Pickford soon turned out to be the most loathsome human we had ever encountered. He was an adventurer of the worst kind, nouveau riche, and bloated with a grotesque sense of self-importance. First came the incessant army of men with shovels, digging into the mountain of earth that was to fill in the surrounding swamp. The undertaking was quite stupendous. We learned from a slave that the final objective was to connect the existing caves with another one of gigantic proportions. Racked by a mania of persecution, Elijah Pickford constantly fired his workers and hired new ones. He did all he could to keep anyone from learning about his plans. My father was amused and said, "The poor fool will end up getting lost in his own cave." But the walls went up, and tongues started wagging. Our detestable neighbor had been a sailor, a ruffian grown rich on questionable trade. Distasteful stories were told of him. When the work was finished, Pickford invited us to the opening of his rambling mansion, which he named Derceto. My father asked what the strange name meant. Pickford answered, "Derceto reminds me of Astarte, the fertility goddess. Around here, the name is Shub-Niggurath. I believe that a name so steeped in evil should be said aloud came as not such a shock to my father, as he himself confided in me some while later." We left immediately.
In June of 1862, Derceto was burned down in unexplained circumstances. It was undoubtedly the deed of some jealous Yankee or another. It was amazing to watch the servants rushing into the flames to try and save their bullet-riddled master. After that terrible night, Derceto fell into ruin. Its blackened walls were soon overgrown, as human-built works always are, by ever-present nature. In 1875, the property was eventually bought by a gentleman whose name was Howard Hartwood. I was sorry that my father, who delighted in fine conversation, was no longer alive to enjoy the company of this new neighbor. Learned and well-versed in history, he had made a particular study of piracy. It was Hartwood who told me that Pickford had commanded a ship that flew the flag of piracy. That explained the scoundrel's great wealth. Hartwood was fascinated by Pickford and undertook a great deal of research in an attempt to find some treasures that he was convinced the pirate had hidden. He went through the ruins inch by inch. He then had the burnt-out house rebuilt exactly as it had been, and refurbished the library that had miraculously escaped the flames on the night of the Great Fire. Hartwood set about studying every volume in that library, and often talked to me of his research. He was a handsome widower, deeply attached to his son Jeremy, who was later to become a professional artist. Hartwood worked incessantly, first from the room I offered him, then from his own freshly restored home, which he rebaptized Derceto. I imagine he hoped to enlist the help of the god of good fortune in his treasure hunt. As far as I have ever been able to tell, all his searching came to nothing. There were no lost treasures to be found at Derceto. I learned of Hartwood's death while I was in Paris. But that, as they say, is another story.
Unfinished chapter of Terra Incognita by Jacob van Ostade. A hitherto unpublished fragment of the manuscript unearthed following indications furnished in the Vatican Library's Expurgatory Index.
In those icy and unwelcoming lands, the rites of wizards and healers are deeply rooted in ancient legend. Mysterious and cruel beings are thought to have ruled over the Arctic plains in times past. A cursed city, enclosed by massive walls, is believed to stand to this day. It contains fabulous treasures and is inhabited by the degenerate descendants of those who instilled centuries of terror in the hearts of the people. These people, naturally placid, are seized with rage and horror at the very mention of the prisoners of the ice. Were these dreadful captives to be freed from their frozen cells, they would reap a horrifying tribute of human flesh. These blood-curdling beings may be invoked by certain ritual words. They can even be controlled, albeit with the greatest of difficulty. I admit to being impressed by these tales, repeated to me on many occasions and in a number of different places during my travels in the region. I have also seen troubling cult objects, sculpted in a material unknown to me. Another remarkable fact is that local Eskimos experience great distaste in pronouncing certain words, and invariably avoid saying them. Here is a living example of the power that words contain. As it is said in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word.
Fragments of the Book of Abdul.
In the antique city of dead Relaya, Cthulhu dreams and waits. In the pit of time, the unspeakable lies in wait. That is not dead which can eternal lie. Relaya, your blocks of stone seal the ritual that gives birth to fear. Cthulhu Fotang! Cthulhu Fotang! Ayah! Ayah! Let he who knows how to invoke the stones act. It is time. Let the shadow of Cthulhu darken the sky. May the servitor of the black goat of the woods with 1,000 youngs sound his flute in honor of the unspeakable. Cthulhu Fatang! Cthulhu Fatang! Ayah! Ayah! May he who may not be named cast his withering gaze upon the unbeliever, for he is the door, the key, and the guardian of the door, and holds you now in his immense power.
The trial of Captain Prext, as reported by his faithful companion Elisha Smith, known amongst his fraternity by the awful name of Captain Ellie Hell. Transcribed from the log found aboard the wreck of the frigate Astarte by H. Hartwood.
"By all the devils!" roared Prext, glaring at William, the judge. "Curse it, Will! It'll take much more than every cannon in the blasted Navy to make me change me mind. You're the greatest blackguard that ever joined our fraternity. Am I not Prext, captain of the Astarte, and bloodiest villain in all the 7 seas? Bloody Ezek, they call me. And you think I'll tell you where I hid my treasure?" The tribunal of the Corsairs' fraternity murmured at this. Prext was indeed all he claimed. The judge, One-Eyed William, slammed his fist on the table, and silence was restored. "Shut your mouth, Prext! You didn't pay the fraternity its rightful share, and that means only one thing. You'll hang by the neck from a yardarm, you scurvy cur! Here's the rope twisted by Satan himself. You threaten me, Will? Many a man better than yourself has lived to regret holding a cutlass in my face. You'll be begging for mercy, mark my words." That shook One-Eyed William, and no mistake. Danny waved his hook in the air and shouted, "Prext was always a loudmouth. The law says we hang him." The jurors took up the cry, "Hang him!" It was Pregst's turn to slam his fist on the table. He threw back his head and roared with laughter. "You fools! You want to kill what will never die? Try it!" Once more, the assembled Corsairs murmured. There was unease in the air. They remembered what happened to Chuck, the gizzard slitter, the man who opened his mouth once too often. It was night, and a bitter wind whipped the New England coast. Snug inside the Dead Horse Inn, one of the Astarte's men was talking. His name was Chuck, and his subject was black magic. He told stories of human sacrifices, voodoo rites, and zombies. He told a tale of a time when their luck was down and they were holed up in a Florida swamp. Prext went missing. When he returned, he shouted, "'Tis the devil that guides us now, me hearties!" Whether that was true or not, the Astarte began taking loot after juicy loot. The favorite song of the Astarte's men, "Crash the Bones," was replaced by a new one. "A skull, go to port saber, to starboard. Pass over that will, and with death you'll deal. If you cut a rope, cut the right, I hope, or then, I don't mind, the death you will find." The next day, as you may have guessed, Chuck's body was found with a dagger plunged between his shoulder blades. Chuck's face was fixed in a ghastly grin. Molten lead had been poured down his throat. Whatever way things happened next, and I don't have the details, Prext was with us again, and we set sail for Florida. We anchored the frigate not far from New Orleans. Taking a few trusted companions with him, Prext set off into the swamp. They carried large wooden chests with them. 2 days later, we heard shots being fired and screams. Prext arrived soon after that and claimed they'd been attacked by alligators. He alone managed to escape with his life. He went on to say that the time had come to share out the spoils of our many loots. I was given command of the Astarte, while Prext handed 3 chests over to the crew. The chests were full of gold and precious gemstones. The rum flowed that night, and the stars shone bright. All at once, I noticed a tall man dressed in black. Prext introduced him to me. "Here's a hearty mate. You can call him Keith. Many a tale he could tell. Pregst laughed loudly and held up a roll of parchment. And his hideout, none better. The parchment fell to the ground, partly unrolling. I noticed what seemed to be a map of underground tunnels, a veritable maze of caverns. Pregst continued, I'm giving up the pirate's life. The estate is in your hands now, my lad. She's a fine ship, and my reputation goes with her. Should any man call me coward, then break his head for me. I'm leaving you only because I found a treasure more precious than the purest of gold. Keith spoke to him then. It is midnight. They are ready, and we must go. The stranger turned his cold eyes on me and said in a soft, chilling voice, Sometimes Pregst talks too much. Forget what he just said, and maybe you'll live. The fellow's words froze the marrow in my bones, and it was all I could do to mumble, I'll not breathe a word. The canoe slid away into the night. Their torches disappeared in the distance of the swamp. My snoring companions didn't hear the insidious rhythm of far-off drums.
The Tale of Captain J.W. Norton of the Army of the Union.
1862. The South was in collapse. Louisiana was open to us. I had each day to requisition victuals for our troops, and was aided in this endeavor by a score of brave men. Rebels were not yet ready to lay down their arms. The region was far from safe. I headed further and further west, and questioned many freed slaves. From them, I learned of a plantation on the coast. Its name was Derceto. We received a less than hearty welcome. Only Pickford, the owner, behaved in a friendly manner. While my men counted cattle and grain reserves, I learned what I could from him. Man was most unusual and possessed an extraordinarily cultured mind. At nightfall, I gave orders for the men to bivouac at Derceto. Pickford invited my second-in-command, Lieutenant Patterson, and myself to dine. And our host proved a most entertaining conversationalist. While coffee was being served, Patterson went to inspect the men's camp. The cigar Pickford offered me was so acrid that my head began to spin. I remembered campfire tales of fellow officers trapped by devilish Confederate tricks. My mind floated in a foul and dense fog, from which emerged the enlarged and deformed face of Pickford. He grinned at me. Patterson's return chased off the nightmare. I heard shouts and firing from outside and found the strength to take out my revolver. I fired 3 shots. Pickford fell to the floor. Patterson then helped me out of the burning house. The air was filled with smoke. We resembled a company in disorderly retreat. I saw slaves leaping into the flames of that inferno. They were trying to save Pickford's life.
Daemonia Particularis, Signs and Rituals, by Heinrich Cassel, Ring Publications.
The ritual of invocation demands that the officiant be pure. We have already described the complex operations to be followed in order to call those that sleep in superior dimensions. We shall, for the present, limit ourselves to the sign of mutual recognition used amongst their number by adepts of the cult of the Old Ones. The sign also serves as protection when in the presence of a servant of evil. The sign resembles a blessing, save that the first and little fingers are both folded beneath the thumb, whilst the second and third fingers are held up. It would appear that this sign has no effect on adepts of a certain rank with knowledge of particular secrets contained in the corpus demonicus. The use of such signs is not without considerable risk to the user during any attempt to call upon those from without.
Memoirs of a Lost Soul.
The mask must fall. You who discover this manuscript, understand this. I am here at your side. I am waiting in the darkness of my crypt. Soon you will belong to me. One of my slaves wrote this document. I have lived for 3 centuries, and my name is Ezekiel Prext, or Elijah Pickford. You may choose which to call me. I do not hide out of fear. My power is immense. I have sailed the 7 seas. My ship, the Astarte, spread terror through all the continents. The corsairs judged me like the Welsh judges of 1620, but they could not destroy me, and neither could the pirates. Now, I am immobilized. Damned Yankees! Witchcraft, voodoo, and the Cthulhu cult. I know them all. I have reigned and implored the stones. Only the Chthonian haunts the cavern and resists me, but he dare not attack. I have need of a living body to regenerate myself. The Heartwoods managed to escape from me, but you who are reading these words, you will yield to my embrace. I hear your ragged breath and smell the stench of your fear. I have vanquished death. I built Deseto. I know what it is to wait. Cthulhu helps me. My servants will lay you upon the sacrificial stone. My roar will rend the night. You will be mine, and I shall reign once more. Come to me.